just keeping them alive so that they can be turned into movies or video games. And that's been true for a while. I think that there is a lot of creativity that still can be done and will happen, is happening in comics, but not necessarily shepherded by the big corporation, whether they're Warner Brothers or Disney or Marvel or any of them. But one of the, again, unique quality of the medium is that it can be done by individual. You don't need a story conference, you don't need a creative team, you don't even need a pencil or an inker or a colorist or whatever. You can get some of the most interesting comics have been done by one or two people, just creating that world of their own imagination.
Even when we went to the licensed characters, what was important to us was that they were like Karl Barks. It wasn't an entire building full of animators doing it. It was one man writing and drawing, and as long as he used ducks, he was allowed to explore his personal past, his political views, his philosophy of life, and bring these things to life. Or Little Lulu, which was a one-panel gag cartoon by Marge Henderson in the Saturday Evening Post, and was then used to sell Kleenexes, was licensed out to Dell Comics, where John Stanley, one person eventually working with somebody to be able to render his rough sketches, doing building a world. And I think that the worlds built by one person come closer to my notions, my old-fashioned notions of what art might be, of an actual act of communion, allowing for one person's experience of the world to be expressed in a way that another person can understand it. It's where you get the quirkiness that comes with having to understand what it is to be passing through the planet.
Hey, a couple of quick questions regarding the book. Hi. I guess I'll stand.
Thanks.
Hey. One, are you planning on releasing more of these with more contemporary artists, given that there's a real renaissance going on with kids' comics still going? Two, whether or not the exclusion of Harvey comics in this was solely a rights issue? And third, why this is U.S.-centric, especially given the internationality of Raw, that it seems to be a book of American comic artists.
Let me start with 1 and 3, and then give 2 to Art. But the third one, why only American? Simply because we had to put boundaries. It's too vast. I mean, it already was incredibly ambitious to do a Treasury of classic kids comics, so we didn't put any comic strips. It's all from the world of comic books, and we didn't put anything outside of the U.S., and certainly would have loved to. And in terms of planning to release more, well, our editor Charlie is here, so it's interesting to hear you say, considering that there's a renaissance for children's comics, because this is born very specifically of the desire to create a renaissance for children's comics. And starting in 2003 and 2004, after Little Lit, I went around every publisher in New York City offering to do comics for kids, to do more Little Lit, to do the TOON books, to do things like this. Actually, we wanted to do the fairy tale parade by Kelly, and got turned down by every single publisher in New York City, including Abrams, actually, because there was no place for children's comics in the bookstore. So I ended up publishing my own TOON books myself, and now in 2009, so 6 years later, it's wonderful to hear you talk about this renaissance of children's comics. Obviously, there's enough interest in comics, partly because of the merchandising. So Marvel, there's money in it now into creating characters. So Jeff Smith is working on a Bone movie, and you just saw the Watchmen movie, and so on and so forth. So it doesn't do much to create new character, but it throws some money that spills onto publishers who then want to publish more books. So that part is good. As to the Harvey comics, what we didn't put in was a lot harder than what we put in.
You know, we took the responsibility of making a Treasury very, very seriously. It's a book that couldn't have been made in the time we gave it before the wonderful world of the internet and uploaded illegal comic books. We were able to read thousands and thousands of comics, literally thousands, or at least scan over them going, okay, this one deals with watermelons and black folks. I don't think I'll read every panel of this one. But looking for what really hit our nerve. And it was trying to find a mix, trying to find a balance of things. And it also, of course, had to do with my own lifelong love for comics, and I have my blind spots and prejudices. I'm usually taken to task for not loving Jack Kirby as much as everybody else does. He's great. I'm learning to like it as primitive outsider art, but it doesn't move me the same way. Here, in looking through this stuff, I slowed down for Archie, and I figured, you know, Archie really belongs in this book because it's the one ubiquitous comic that gets sold in supermarkets rather than in specialty comics shops. People will know it. And then eventually working with, again, thanks to the internet, a group of advisors, people who are scholars of one branch of these comics or another, like Michael Barrier, who really knows more about Donald Duck and Walt Kelly than almost anybody, and